History class was a drag, just a bunch of black and white photos and dates that didn't mean anything. Our teacher took us to the city museum for a field trip, trying to make it come alive. I wandered off from the group, bored, trailing my fingers along the glass cases. Inside one, a small, worn leather pouch lay next to a soldier's uniform. Something about it seemed different, warmer. I don't know why I did it, but when no one was looking, I reached under the glass and touched it. The world didn't just spin, it shattered. 1 second I was in a quiet, air-conditioned museum. The next I was on my back in cold, wet mud. The air smelled of damp earth and something acrid, like burnt metal. A deafening roar echoed in the distance, making the ground tremble. I scrambled up, my modern clothes already caked in filth. I was in a trench, a real, honest-to-goodness trench, just like in the textbooks, but this was in full, terrifying color. Men in muddy uniforms rushed past me, their faces smudged with dirt and exhaustion. A hand grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around. A young man, barely older than me, with kind eyes and a tired smile, steadied me. He shouted over the noise, "You all right, lad? You look like you've seen a ghost." I just stared, speechless. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Where am I?" I stammered. He patted my back. "The Somme, mate. Welcome to France, 1916. I'm Thomas. You're a bit out of uniform, aren't you?" He chuckled, but his eyes were filled with a concern that felt ancient. I was a 15-year-old kid from the 21st century, and I had just fallen into the heart of World War I. Thomas took me under his wing. He must have thought I was a shell-shocked new recruit who'd lost his memory. He found me a spare uniform, which felt rough and heavy, and shared his meager ration of hard bread and watery stew. He introduced me to his friends, Arthur, a lanky boy who was always sketching in a small notebook, and James, who was quiet but had a knack for finding humor in the bleakest moments. I learned their names, their hometowns, their dreams. They weren't just soldiers from a history book, they were kids. Arthur wanted to be an artist in Paris. James wanted to open a bakery with his father. Thomas just wanted to go home and see his family again. The days were a blur of cold, mud, and waiting. We huddled together for warmth during the freezing nights, listening to the distant symphony of destruction. I tried to explain where I was from, talking about smartphones and the internet, but they just laughed, thinking it was my own brand of battlefield humor. A pocket-sized talking box. "Thomas, I think the new lad's got a grand imagination," James would say, nudging me with his elbow. And in those moments, huddled in the dark, sharing stories and impossible dreams, I forgot to be scared. I found a strange kind of brotherhood in that muddy ditch. We'd have contests to see who could flick a biscuit the farthest. Arthur would draw caricatures of the sergeants that made us howl with laughter. It was humanity, surviving in a place designed to extinguish it. One evening, as the sky turned a bruised purple, a chilling silence fell over the trenches. An officer's whistle pierced the air. The order came down the line. Over the top at dawn. The light-hearted mood evaporated. Fear, cold and sharp, replaced it. I saw it in James's wide eyes, in the way Arthur clutched his sketchbook to his chest. Thomas, however, seemed calm. He sat beside me, cleaning his rifle with steady hands. "Scared?" he asked gently. I could only nod, my throat too tight to speak. He looked out over the tangled mess of barbed wire in no man's land. "Bravery isn't about not being scared, Alex," he said, using the name I'd given him. "It's about being terrified and doing what you have to do anyway, for the bloke next to you." He reached into his tunic and pulled out a small worn leather pouch. My heart stopped. It was the same one from the museum. "My father gave this to me," he said, his voice soft. "Said it would keep me safe, bring me home." He pressed it into my hand. "You hold on to it for me tonight. For luck." The leather felt warm, just as it had in the museum. A strange energy pulsed from it. I looked from the pouch to Thomas's face, a terrible understanding dawning on me. He was the soldier, the owner of the artifact. This was his story. My trip here wasn't an accident. The night was the longest of my life. Sleep was impossible. All I could think about was Thomas, Arthur, and James going over the top into a hail of machine gun fire. History books had told me the outcome of these battles. I knew what was coming. I had to do something. But what? Change history? I was just a kid. As the first hint of gray light appeared on the horizon, the whistle started to blow. "Time to go!" a sergeant bellowed. Men started climbing the ladders. My blood ran cold. Thomas found me, his face grim but resolute. "Alex, stay here. You're not ready for this." He gave me a firm nod. "Look after yourself." He started to climb. I couldn't let him go. I yelled his name, scrambling after him, holding out the pouch. "Thomas, wait! You need this. It's yours." He paused on the ladder, looking down at me. "Keep it, mate," he said with a small, sad smile. "Maybe it'll get one of us home." As my fingers brushed against his, the pouch in my hand flared with an impossible light. The world dissolved again, the roar of the impending battle fading into a high-pitched hum. The last thing I saw was Thomas's face, a look of utter shock and awe. Before everything went white, I was on my knees, back on the polished floor of the museum. The silence was deafening. Tourists milled around, oblivious. My clothes were clean. The mud, the cold, the smell of fear. It was all gone, but the memory was seared into my mind. I looked at the glass case. The uniform was there, and next to it the small leather pouch. But now it wasn't just an artifact. It was Thomas's. I walked over to the plaque on the wall, one I had ignored earlier. It listed the names of the soldiers from the local battalion who had died at the Somme. I scanned the list, my heart pounding. Arthur, James, and there it was, Thomas, killed in action July 1st, 1916. He never made it home. He gave me his good luck charm, his hope, and it sent me back to safety while he walked into history. Tears streamed down my face. I finally understood. History isn't just dates and black and white photos. It's the stories of young people, kids just like me, who had dreams and fears and friendships. They were asked to make the ultimate sacrifice for the peace I took for granted every single day. I stood there for a long time, looking at the pouch, no longer just an object, but a symbol of courage, friendship, and a promise. A promise to remember. Thanks for watching. Their stories deserve to be told. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more journeys into the past.